What the heck is lore? Is this lore? How about McCunky? Is that lore? I recently had a discussion with a very wise man who told me that obsessing over lore can take away from more constructive or possibly more important discussions about art. My initial reaction was to tell him that he was stupid. The idea that someone doesn't like lore immediately pissed me off, myself being a dweeb that will listen to dozens of hours of Zelda lore podcasts. But the longer we talked, the more I started to ask myself, what even is lore? To be able to have a talk about lore and its importance or non-importance, we first have to come to an agreement on what the thing even is. When art is handed from the creator to the consumer, that artist no longer has agency over it. They have given it up. It is no longer theirs. The creator must be at peace with relinquishing control over that beautiful little turd that they've been polishing. The writer is in charge of creating the story, the world, the characters. These are things that cannot be created or destroyed in post. But the specifics, the details, the universal laws, these are things that can be sprinkled on whenever and by whoever, as we can see by nearly every fan base of any piece of media ever. While the story is something that is always actively happening, lore is what helps us better understand and gives context to the things that we already know. It can be small details that help you understand the motivations behind certain characters' actions, or maybe it's an ancient tale of how the geography of the world became what it is. Whatever it is, it's important that the story can exist independent of these details and survive on its own. To necessitate a deep dive into the lore of a world to understand its story can quickly alienate and turn away people that would have otherwise been fans of that piece of media. Lore should be there for audiences that wish to engage with it. I'm all about watching dozens of hours of videos deciphering why Tingle's green suit is so tight down there. But locking basic story beats behind these kind of lore tidbits makes the story inaccessible for the non-infinite free time scholars among us. If you have to scour a wiki to find basic pieces of the story, then I see that as a failure on the media's part to give the players the tools to explore. On the other side, an overuse of passive storytelling and world building can be a danger as it takes away and distracts from the ability to actually craft a beautiful narrative. A story relies just as much on the person experiencing it as it does the person creating it in the first place. But the transaction is not one-to-one. The intentions that the author or the writer or the developer has for the story they've created is not the end-all be-all of how the consumer is meant to enjoy it. With every new audience member, every new player, every new reader comes a unique perspective capable of breaking down that story in whatever way their imagination sees fit and building it back up how their brain wants. The worlds writers create are not scripts meant to be read line by line, but roadmaps meant to be followed by our imaginations. Audiences constantly begging for writers to create a perfectly circular world that leaves no stone unturned and no questions unanswered runs the risk of pushing world building to the very forefront of these writers' minds, possibly leaving good storytelling and narrative building to the wayside. All right, cool. We all hate lore now? Now let's talk a little bit about how lore as a way of passive storytelling is actually sick as shit. Diving deep into the mythos and backstory of the worlds that we're exploring can actually just help with immersion. Discovering Zelda's journal that details how she feels about Link and the situation that she's in, it feels like we stumbled upon someone's real diary. Even though the journal was for the player to find and read and gain knowledge, it still feels like we're kind of snooping in on someone's business. Engaging with the world's lore can also make people feel more like a part of the world themselves. People aren't really going out and discovering new lands and shit anymore. Nowadays, we take pride in deciphering the worlds that we ourselves created. Examples like finding ways for every game from a series to fit into one timeline despite the developers having no intention of them fitting in the first place is how we make media our own. Fan theories can be just as valid and true as answers that developers give to questions that we have about the worlds that they create. And that allows the communities to have agency over the games that we, the players, are sinking hundreds of hours into. If enough people agree on something about a world that is already made up to begin with, then that might as well be true. This ability to create our own lore and backstories for these worlds gives us a sense of ownership. We feel connected to the stories that we had a part in crafting and discovering. While lore discussions do have the potential to put off newer fans to certain types of media, they also have the incredible potential to bring us together in a way that is unique and somewhat productive, and at the very least fun. I love learning about the lore of the games that I play. I love hearing all the little details that other people pick up that have larger implications on the story. I love learning about the relationships behind the scenes that have no effect on gameplay. World building is just fun, but at the end of the day, it should be extra. Thank you for listening. If you're still watching, I appreciate you. And even for those of you that dropped off early, I still appreciate you. It's so beautiful.
Subscribe to EroyMac. With one easy click, you can increase not just shaft length, but ball width too.
I subscribed and the plumpness of my glands increased tenfold. Now everyone wants a piece of this stank dick.